Do we need a pastor? Hmm. Let's go.
What we thinking now? What we thinking now? What we thinking now? Very toxic. Very toxic. Very toxic. Very, very toxic. Very toxic. Very toxic.
Hello. This is Very Thoughtsy. And I'm back with another small thought today. This one is something that's been being discussed a lot, and I guess I'll chime in. And this clip, actually, I'm going to have two small ones from a discussion that I saw on Jude 3 Project. And she had some interesting comments that I want to react to, somewhat a little bit lightly on one, but then I'll go into it because that is the subject for today. So I'll go ahead and get started on that. Here's her clip.
Y'all can get together around brunch in the Bible every week and read through books of the Bible, and you feel like you're learning something. These guys were like, Lisa, we finally celibate because we got a group. I said, that's great, but you need a pastor.
And there it is, her first comment and the subject of my comments for today. Do we need a pastor? And I think earlier in the clip, right before the part that I played, she was speaking about people who are saying, hey, we don't really feel we need a pastor. We have small groups. Churches have small groups. It's the same thing. And I know that even in my life, I've said that only because of certain things. And, you get into it because I've heard in other podcasts, people will say, oh, people don't want a pastor because they don't want to pay tithes and offering, or people don't want a pastor because they don't want people telling them what to do. Let's just be real. You're in the wrong spirit, et cetera, et cetera. I guess there is or could be some validity to some of that, but I really would caution people to stop jumping to conclusions about why people do what they do. You could probably run a poll and put those and maybe one or two other things and the word other. And I bet you other would probably win that poll because people don't go for a lot of reasons. But at the end of the day, that doesn't mean that they're good reasons. And I'll speak on me a little bit later. But I want to get into the meat of the discussion, which is the second clip. And something I thought was just funny, so I'll go ahead and let that play.
It's not just about having community one with another. You need a shepherd. That is the way God has designed. We can get off into some weird stuff by ourselves in a community of our peers, reading the Bible without a guide. LeBron is an amazing player. I would argue the greatest basketball player of all time. But the Lakers are nothing without a coach.
Okay, so first, just lightheartedly speaking, really, LeBron? To me, she didn't sell that. I'm sorry. Maybe somebody who can add her. No, LeBron was not a good example, not just because they were in Chicago, but he's been sold as someone who basically was the coach of the team almost his entire career. So using him as an example to say that you need a coach was not good because a lot of times people said that he was really, the brains behind what was going on all his teams, and that he would hire coaches who maybe weren't as experienced or, didn't have the cachet of other coaches to, so he would be able to really be the one that's in control, calling the shots and somewhat doing the coaching. So I don't know if that was a good example, ma'am. But no, just and also greatest of all time. No. But anyway, do you need a pastor? Her point of needing someone outside of yourself, it's a good one. But then, you could throw that back and say that, a lot of people, and this is coming from a place of, you know, immaturity possibly, but those people, I can see them not being sold with that because I'll give you a story about me. I used to sing in this group, and we were in the store just walking around. You know how the stores play all kinds of music, and an oldie but goodie, jam came on, and we just kind of fell in line. And who knew? We didn't know the others were singing the parts until we kind of all came into each other's area and heard this wonderful harmony. And we kind of laughed and looked around at each other and, maybe high fived after it was over, like, hey, we fell right in line with that because we knew the parts and we had an ear to hear the harmony in the song and to duplicate it. And there was a few people that were watching and was like kind of enjoying what was going on for the little second that we decided to sing the hook. But what am I saying? I'm saying that there will be cases when people, if they believe they're hearing from God and they believe they know how to seek God and you can't have an ear to hear, you may feel you're being directed. And that also happened in the Bible itself with certain people. So they can make that argument. I'm not going to say they're going to win it, but that means there's still more case to be made. But as I stated, I've also had my own experience with this. I used to say it. Having any pushback is about the word need, because when you use the word need, it gives an impression that if you don't, you will cease to exist. Like death is certain. And nobody can really say that. And if you look at figures from the Old Testament, and I know it was different in a different covenant, but there are people, they weren't they were living in caves. They were, going these long periods of time without, you don't see them saying, and they were in the cave hiding from the queen. And, well, they went to church that Sunday or they went to the synagogue to pray. No, they were on the run. Yet they had a very alive relationship with God and they communed with God and God communed with them. Again, it takes you having a ear to hear and all of that, and that's going to be developed for more of somebody that's been walking with Christ for a long time. A new believer won't be able to say that. If you wander so far that you're out here alone and you wander up on a wolf, you're done for. And the thing about it is, in the spirit and in the things of the spirit, there's so much that we don't know. We are like sheep being just preyed upon by things in the spirit that we don't have knowledge of. And we can study to show ourselves approved. And over time, we will get that knowledge and we will become bigger. What is the difference? A sheep will know the voice of the shepherd and will respond to that and will follow. But if you're not a sheep, then yeah, you might not think you need a shepherd because you're not a sheep. A shepherd, we need a shepherd. That's what she's saying. We don't need a hireling. And I think some of the people who are saying, I don't need this, it's coming from a place of hurt. And that's what I wanted to get into a little bit is sometimes when people who are, you have a church home and you're eating good, and especially if you've never been in a place of lack, where maybe, just like they have food deserts, sometimes they have spiritual food deserts, meaning all the churches in the area are the same, or they extremely religious and caught up in tradition, and the word is not coming forth like what you are used to. And so you're judging based on something that you don't even know is available in the area. And so you can't just tell, or you shouldn't just tell a person, just go to a church. You got to get involved in the church. Plug in, get involved in a church. Because if a wolf is the one heading up the church, you basically sending them to get slaughtered. No, they need sound doctrine. They need a shepherd. They don't need a hireling. And the difference, of course, between a shepherd and a hireling is their heart toward the sheep. You need somebody that cares for your soul and will watch out for you. And as somebody who has experienced that lack, I was in a situation, and I'm not going to go into detail, but I'll say the thing that had me out here without one or had me in a position where I left and then I was in no rush to go back was because of a church hurt situation. Basically, I had something that happened with me and another person. The person was in ministry. So was I guess, on a lower level of ministry. And I wanted to speak to leadership. I tried to enact Matthew 18. I said it by scripture. I called for it. And I didn't see anything done. That doesn't mean anything wasn't done. To be fully transparent, maybe they did do something and I just didn't see it. But nothing that I saw before I left. Now, after I left, I don't know what happened. But in the situation, I didn't feel protected. I didn't feel heard. I felt dismissed. I experienced that. And it was a failure of leadership. And even if they rebuked me, the point is to see some kind of care. It was apathy. And so I moved on. And I just honestly, in some ways, haven't been right since. But I experienced a lot of hurt out of that situation that it took me a long time to get over. I'm talking about years. And so when you say that, you actually are adding to the situation by bringing your judgment into something that you don't understand. If you don't know, just say you don't know and move on. But church hurt is very real, but it's only one reason. There are some people who don't like structure, and there are some people who don't feel that some of the things that take place in church should take place in church. And so there's just a lot of different reasons. And honestly, you should speak to people individually, find out what it is, and pull up that weed because they're not going to return, especially if all you're doing is throwing judgment. That reminds them of exactly the reason that they left. So you do, or we should want a pastor. We should want that protection. I did in that case, and it wasn't given to me. So to me, not being in a church was just like being in one because I didn't get the protection. I didn't get what I needed in that situation. So yes, Jude 3 Project had an amazing conversation. You guys should go over to that channel. I do believe this conversation is probably a week old by now, but you'll find it. And it'll bless you if you have the time. Maybe I think it's like an hour and a half. Go over and just check it out. But God is faithful, and He will continue to draw you to Himself. He will heal your wounds, and He will make sure that you understand you are loved. And hopefully, you'll start to look again and find something in somewhere that you feel that you belong. And now that you've gone through it, you have experienced enough growth that you, even if something comes again, because the enemy knows that took you out. You know what I'm saying? Took you out for a season. And so he's going to come and try it again. Believe it. But be aware of the wiles of the enemy. Be aware that these are tactics that will be tried to take you out of doing the will. And for a season, it took me out. I was no longer singing for Christ. I was no longer lifting up His name. And that's exactly what the enemy wanted. But God. And I have my praise back, and I will lift it up. Anyway, that's all I have to say. And hope to see you next time. This is Very Thoughtsy.